The silence at Mons Barracks wasn't just silence. It was the kind of silence that falls when something historic, something quietly powerful, something slightly unsettling is about to happen right in front of everyone, and yet almost no one fully understands it yet. Because this was not just a parade, not just a royal appearance, not just another carefully staged monarchy moment. This was the day Catherine walked in alone, and when she walked in alone, everything changed. No Prince William beside her, no shared spotlight, no safe royal pairing, just Catherine stepping out of that vehicle in emerald green, standing in front of soldiers, officers, cameras, history, expectation, and perhaps for the first time, standing there not as a royal wife, but as something much more powerful, something much more dangerous to royal tradition, an institution on her own. Because if you look closely at moments like this, truly closely, you start to realize that royal history doesn't change with loud announcements. It changes with quiet images. A woman stepping out of a car alone, a salute taken alone, a parade commanded alone. And that is exactly what happened on March 17th, 2026. And the energy in the air that morning, it wasn't just pride. It wasn't just celebration. It was tension. Because everyone watching knew they were not just watching Catherine attend a parade, they were watching Catherine take a step closer to the crown in a way that didn't require anyone to say it out loud. Just 2 years earlier, the world had been looking at a very different image. Not the strong figure in a structured coat and military beret, but a fragile woman sitting on a bench, revealing a diagnosis that sent shockwaves across the world. The future queen, suddenly human, suddenly vulnerable, suddenly gone from public view. And when a royal disappears, the silence becomes louder than any announcement. And that silence in 2024 and 2025 made people nervous. Because the monarchy is built on visibility, presence, stability. And when the woman who represents the future of that stability disappears, people start to ask questions no palace once asked. But what happened at Mons Barracks in 2026 felt like an answer to those questions. Not spoken, not written, but shown. And the way she moved that day told a story far bigger than a St. Patrick's Day parade. She didn't walk like someone returning. She walked like someone arriving. Observers noticed the way the soldiers reacted to her. Not just formal respect, but something warmer, something deeper. She stopped to speak to them, asked about their families, their service, their lives, and those small moments, the ones cameras barely catch, those are the moments that build real power. Because monarchy in the modern world doesn't survive on crowns, it survives on connection, and Catherine understands that better than almost anyone. But then there were the details. And in royal life, details are never just details. The emerald coat, not just fashion, but a message. The structured shoulders, not softness, but authority. The beret, not decoration, but symbolism. She didn't dress like a princess attending an event. She dressed like a colonel commanding one. And that was not an accident. And then the necklace. A historic diamond necklace once belonging to Queen Elizabeth II. And this is where things get very interesting, because royal jewelry is never just jewelry. It is communication. Silent communication. When Catherine wore that necklace, she wasn't just honoring the past, she was aligning herself with it. Visually, symbolically, politically. The message was subtle but powerful. Continuity, legacy, authority. And if you think that's reading too much into a necklace, then you don't understand how royal signaling works. In the royal family, nothing is random, especially not diamonds that belong to a queen who ruled for 70 years. But the most revealing moment of the entire day wasn't the salute. It wasn't the parade. It wasn't even the speech. It was a quiet moment that almost looked insignificant when Catherine walked up to the Irish wolfhound mascot, Seamus, and gently pinned a shamrock onto his collar, then leaned in and whispered to him, calling him dapper while scratching behind his ears. That moment told you everything about how she operates. Power, but gentle. Authority, but human. Royal, but relatable. And that combination is extremely rare and extremely effective. Because what we were really watching that day was not a parade. We were watching a transition. Not announced, not confirmed, but visible. And the most fascinating part, the palace didn't need to say a word. The pictures said everything. And if this was her first solo parade like this, the real question is not what happened at Mons Barracks. The real question is what this means for the future of the monarchy, and whether this was the moment Catherine stopped being the Princess of Wales and quietly started becoming something much bigger. Because remember this, Prince William previously held this exact role with the Irish Guards before it was passed to Catherine in 2022. That transfer alone was significant, but moments like this solo parade in 2026 show what that transfer really meant. It wasn't just a ceremonial handover, it was a positioning move, a very strategic one. When Catherine stood on that dais and took the royal salute alone, she wasn't just representing the regiment regiment. She was representing the crown, alone. And in royal terms, that image matters more than any speech ever could. Because the monarchy survives on imagery. And the image of Catherine standing alone in front of hundreds of soldiers, steady, composed, completely in control, that image travels across the world in seconds, and it tells people something very simple: she's ready. But the day didn't end on the parade ground. And this is where Catherine does something that very few royals have mastered in the modern era: the switch. The switch from commander to comforter, from colonel to mother, from symbol to human. When she stepped down from the formal ceremony and walked toward the families, the veterans, the children, the cadets, the entire atmosphere changed. Suddenly, the rigid military environment turned into something warmer, something personal. She knelt to speak to a little girl who handed her flowers, brushing the barracks floor with her coat as she bent down to eye level. That image alone is public relations gold, but more importantly, it didn't look forced. It looked natural. And that is the difference between popularity and power. Then she spoke to the young cadets, asking about their training, their future, their ambitions, telling them the military offers incredible opportunities and a strong community. And again, this seems like a small conversation, but it isn't. Because this is how modern monarchy builds loyalty, not through distance, but through presence. And then came perhaps the most revealing interactions of all: the veterans, older men who had served decades ago, men who had seen monarchs come and go, men who understand hierarchy, duty, respect. And when she stopped to listen to their stories, not rush them, not just nod and move on, but actually listen, that is when you build the kind of reputation that cannot be manufactured by press offices. One veteran was overheard saying something very interesting after meeting her. He said, "You don't just see the princess when she walks into a room, you feel the weight of the position she holds." That sentence right there explains everything. Because monarchy is not about celebrity, it's about presence. And presence is something you cannot fake. People either feel it or they don't. And what makes this moment even more fascinating is the bigger strategy that seems to be unfolding. Because if you look at William and Catherine now, they are no longer operating like a traditional royal couple that appears everywhere together. They are operating like two separate power centers. William focusing on global projects, diplomacy, environment, big international stages. Catherine focusing on people, families, mental health, early childhood, and now increasingly the military. This is not accidental. This is a divide and conquer monarchy model. Two figures, two roles, two spheres of influence, one crown. And suddenly her solo appearance doesn't look like a one-off event anymore. It looks like a preview of how the monarchy will function in the future, not with one central figure doing everything, but with multiple powerful figures operating independently but strategically. Which brings us back to the most important image of the entire day: Catherine leaving Mons Barracks. Because entrances are important, but royal exits are even more important. The last image people see is the one that stays in their minds. And the last image that day was simple but incredibly powerful. Catherine walking away after successfully commanding a historic parade, greeting soldiers, inspiring cadets, honoring veterans, comforting children, representing the Queen's legacy, and doing it all alone. No drama, no mistakes, no missteps, just quiet, controlled, undeniable authority. And that is how power really looks. Not loud, not desperate, not attention-seeking. Calm, controlled, certain. So when historians look back at the evolution of the modern monarchy, they may not point to a coronation, or a speech, or a royal scandal. They might point to a cold morning in March 2026 at Mons Barracks, when a woman in emerald green stepped out of a car alone, and without saying a single word, showed the world that the future of the monarchy had already arrived.